we are at the start of June. By the way, where did half the year go? Where did half the year go? I feel like I'm going to blink and I'm going to start hearing some 90s fall music, and I'm going to be hearing some hocus pocus quotes and Gilmore Girls scenes on social media. Maybe too specific. Anyway, we have a Gemini new moon at the start of this new month of June. And the best way I can describe it is, you know the phrase, curiosity killed the cat? This new moon is imbuing the energy of the opposite of that. So curiosity gave the cat 20 more lives. What I mean by that is there's a lot of supportive energy around us following our curiosities, talking about, expressing our curiosities, and all things information exchange, all things out of the air. You know, Gemini is an air sign. And I say this not only because this is the start of a new lunation and there's a lot of supportive energy within this space for us, but also because we see notable roles, not only with Jupiter, which is also currently transiting Gemini, which is bringing this expansive energy and amplifying what's going on here with Gemini. But we also see that Venus, the planet of love and relationships, is also in Gemini. And so we're having this Gemini parade right now with the Sun, Moon, Venus, Jupiter. I think Mars is going to be entering Gemini. So there's a lot going on and it's very supportive. There's a lot of energy around how we exchange information and how we communicate, and namely, finally being able to articulate and put words to things that have been going on internally and that we've been experiencing for a while. Hello friends, it's your girl Alina, and in this video we'll be talking about the top things for you to know all about this June 6th or 5th, depending on your time zone, new moon happening at 16 degrees in the mutable air sign of Gemini. Now, before we dive in, I wanted to mention that, as many of y'all already know, the first annual R-Align retreat that will be happening in Thailand is happening this June. We're really excited about it, everyone who's going, but I'm actually planning for the next retreat right now. And I'm doing it way ahead of time, not only to make it easier for myself, my co-host to plan, but also to make it easier for y'all, because I want to know, where do you want to go on a retreat? What is your budget? What is the best time of year for you to join a retreat of like-minded astrology and spirituality loving people who also want to explore the world in a group and have these shared experiences? I'm really excited to keep y'all updated as we travel through Thailand, but in the meantime, I would greatly appreciate if you click the link in my description to fill out the survey to let me know all of these different aspects of what you want out of a retreat from me, from R-Align, that we can enjoy together. But with that said, let's dive into the video. All right, so first up, let's talk about the nature of a new moon. So a new moon signifies the beginning of a new lunar cycle, where we see in the night sky that the moon is virtually invisible because it's not reflecting any of the sun's light. This is actually a very optimal time for stargazing for that reason, because the moon's light isn't sort of like washing out the stars, so it's a lot easier to stargaze. But from an astrological perspective, now can be a very potent time for rest and reflecting. That way we can more clearly see and understand the right sort of steps to take as we step into a new lunar cycle. New moons are an optimal time for manifesting and intention setting as well. And just as we see that the light builds on the surface of the moon as it goes to its energetic peak at the full moon, so too can the energy and momentum around any intentions that we set grow as they manifest here on this plane in the real world. And I do want to note that just because this is the start of a new lunar cycle and you can maybe set new intentions, that doesn't equate to you necessarily needing to be in action. It's more so about pausing to process. Imagine when you finally sit down and you sit in silence and all of these ideas start popping up and you're like, oh my gosh. And that's one of the reasons why we want to pacify ourselves on our phones or you know, get into escapism in a lot of ways, because we're not fully sure how to process a lot of stuff that comes up for us. And during a new moon, it's this sort of lunar and 28-day cycle cosmic opportunity for us to pause and process those things, or at least reflect in the previous lunar cycle and see what didn't work for us and see how maybe we can approach things slightly differently moving forward. And with that foundation laid, so to speak, we can now look at what it means for there to be a Gemini new moon, where the moon is transiting Gemini at the time of a new lunar cycle. So when we see that happen, it's really this cosmic opportunity to maybe set intentions on and reflect on themes that of Gemini. Not just because the moon is in Gemini, but because it's also in conjunction with the sun. And we also see that it's in conjunction with Venus. There's a lot of planets in Gemini right now. So reflecting on Gemini themes and where we're at in terms of them can be very helpful, especially when it comes to intention setting, because there's a lot of momentum around our personal growth within those realms. And what I mean by that is these Gemini characteristics, that is our communication skills, how we express ourselves. When do we ask for help? Are we comfortable with asking for help? Are we open-minded? Are we empathetic with others? Do we hold space for the duality of things? You know, Gemini is represented by the twins partially because it represents the power of holding space for the duality of things, of the good and the bad, of the right and what we consider the wrong. Think of the symbol of the yin and yang. In the yin and yang symbol, we see that there are two dots on either side, on the yang side and of the yin side. Within the white, there is that little black dot. Within the black, there's a little white dot. And that's to signify that within the yang, there's a little bit of yin, and within the yin, there's a little bit of yang. It's not fully polarized one or the other, and you never see that truly in nature, where it's only one or the other. There's always complexity, there's always nuance to all things, and when we can acknowledge that, it's a lot easier for us to hold space for different perspectives and not be too rigid. That brings up another element of Gemini. Gemini is a mutable air sign. The modality of being mutable signifies the sort of characteristic and nature that you see of being able to be mutable, being able to kind of blend in, be a chameleon, hold space for the energy and even embody the energy of other things, other people, other environments, and not be so rigid in who we think we are and who our ego tells us we are, or what our ego tells us is right or wrong, light or dark. But holding space for all of it, and being able to embody those things. Another aspect of being mutable and another aspect of Gemini is being flexible. Being flexible with information, being open-minded to change, being able to pivot and things like that. And also going back to air sign. Air signs are all about communication, socializing, information exchange, all things out of the air, right? We speak through the air. And that brings me to another tip specifically for this new moon, and that is leaning into words of affirmation and the power of your voice, the power of the vibrations that you can emit as you speak your truth, whether that is you speaking normally or literally repeating and speaking out into the universe that which you seek, or speaking out back to ourselves, the affirmations that we wish to embed deep within our psyche. Those things are very potent around this time. The element of air and utilizing this around this new moon is very clearly and easily received by the universe in a lot of ways. So especially if you're looking to do any sort of new moon ritual, whether it's manifesting things, really lean into speaking that which you seek. That will be very helpful. Another characteristic that I want to mention, maybe you've experienced this or maybe you've kind of seen this out in the world. You know that sort of trope of like, you break up with somebody and all you want to do is kind of talk about what happened, talk about the breakup, talk about the person, talk to the point that you annoy your friends, or maybe you've had a friend do that where they constantly bring up the relationship. And that is a good example of how through talking things out, deep emotions, deep triggers, things and situations that we didn't fully process in the moment, maybe because we wanted to go along to get along, finally we reach a point where we feel ready to talk about it, because through talking about it, through the act of having to articulate our thought process and how we feel, it actually helps us understand how we feel and understand things and process them in a lot better way. And the reason why I bring that up is around the time of Gemini New Moon, at the start of a new lunar cycle, especially leading up to it really, before you start a new cycle, processing things through articulation, through therapy, through venting with friends, through journaling, all of these things of getting it out, namely through the air if you can, really like verbally articulating it. It could be singing that song that's so relatable, but figuring out ways to transmute, process, and face more complex or maybe even heavier energies that you feel like you haven't really fully, you know, like it kind of circles back in your mind a little bit, almost like a rumination. Oftentimes that happens because there's a part of us that's asking to be acknowledged. An analogy that I like to give is like, there's like a part of your inner child, or there's a part of you that's wounded. And if you can imagine this like white room with all your different personalities and all these different sides of your psyche, and there's a side of your psyche that's holding up this memory all the time and it keeps on popping up in your brain. And imagining it like it's this aspect of your inner child that's like, what happened here? I don't understand. I just want to understand. And sometimes we over intellectualize things and we're like, oh, I still don't understand it. And sometimes it's about feeling those feelings. Sometimes it's about speaking them out and paying attention to what comes up for us physiologically when that happens. So those are just sort of tips for what might come up around this time based off of the astrology. I digress. But when we now move over to the top transits happening around this lunation that help us paint the picture and understand the story of what's going to be going on around the time of June 6th or 5th, around the time of this lunation, we see that both the sun and moon, which are already conjunct, because a new moon is always when the sun and moon conjunct with one another, they will be conjuncting with Venus in Gemini. So all three are in Gemini and all three are coming together. Now, when we have this type of transit, it can present a very potent opportunity for personal, professional, and spiritual growth. Now, when we have this type of transit, not just society as a whole, but us on an interpersonal level, we feel a little bit more confident when it comes to socializing. We can tend to feel this desire to learn more, whether that's learning more through being around new people or the same people and having interesting conversations. And it just feels a lot easier to connect with one another and to exchange information. Why? Because we see these notable, very influential planets, that of the sun, moon, and Venus, all in the social information exchange air sign of Gemini. And notably, we know that Venus rules over our relationships. By the way, if you see like it gets dark and then light in these videos, it's because it's the springtime where I am in the northern hemisphere and we got a lot of clouds. It's a windy day. So clouds come in and then they come out and then it's bright and it's dark. But when we see this type of transit, it can make it very easy to get our ideas across to one another. It can make it feel a lot easier to connect with one another on an intellectual level, and especially when it comes to our relationships. So think about your close friends, relationships of the heart, and even on a romantic level. If you've been noticing a sort of disconnect in your thinking processes, or like maybe there being miscommunication over the last few days, around the time of this new moon, there should feel like there's a bit more clarity. And it's a bit easier to get your ideas across. And there's also a sense of like, almost like this surge in energy when it comes to wanting to experience new things and gather new information. But ultimately, if you follow your curiosities, you are going to find very interesting things, very little roadblocks by way of learning and asking questions and seeking information around this time, especially when it comes to like information exchange. We also see that Jupiter in Gemini will be trining with Pluto in Aquarius around the time of this new moon. So on a collective level, this trine can signify a time of a lot of innovation and a lot of reform in a lot of ways. Not just on an intellectual level, you might notice that you have a lot more epiphanies and new ideas. And it's very serendipitous that this is happening around the time of a new lunar cycle, in that you can start this new cycle with these new perspectives and approaches. But because it involves Pluto, Pluto really rules over a lot of our shadow sides, our shadow selves in a lot of ways, a lot of aspects of our psyche that we might want to kind of push down because it's inconvenient for the status quo, or it makes it harder to kind of blend in and be a part of maybe a group that you want to be accepted by. This could be work, society, communities, family, things like that. And when it comes together with Jupiter, Jupiter is this planet of expansion. It can tend to highlight and sort of amplify the state of the planet that it's coming together with. I might have said conjunction, I meant trine. But when we see that happen, there can be a lot of innovation. And a lot of this innovation is through us realizing, oh, this thing over here is not working actually. Or like, actually there was this bug in the tech, or like there's been this sort of hiccup or issue in the work cycle or in the home or in the way that our workflow has been going. And now that I see where that issue is, I can actually clean that up. I can actually clear that. I can actually start fresh and from a different approach and in a different way. So when we see that Jupiter trines with Pluto in this way, especially when Pluto's in the very innovative, community-focused sign of Aquarius, there's going to be a lot of innovation that's going to be coming up, not just on a personal level where we feel like it's a bit easier to be more strategic in our communication and in our approaches to things. We can kind of see this new path to try something differently. But on a collective level, on a grand scale, like I think that we're going to look back on this time and see that very interesting potential inventions and changes happened specifically in the tech sphere, in my opinion. I think when it comes to tech, when it comes to the internet, because Jupiter is in Gemini, And Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Mercury rules over all things out of the air, including the internet. But yeah, it's just a very innovative time. So definitely hold space for epiphanies, ideas. And a great way to do that is through meditation. And I don't mean meditation as in like the more modern sense of pushing down all of your thoughts to clear your mind, but allowing your mind to flow. Literally sitting and being like, all right, brain, what's about to come up? And letting it come up, not judging what comes up, allowing it to pass. Also, what comes up that I think is very aligned with this lunation is a mountaintop type meditation where you're visualizing your thoughts as clouds and allowing them to flow across the sky that is your psyche, you know, and not judging them, but allowing them to be there and holding space for them as they pass. Because when you do that, it can make it easier for ideas to flow because we're not restricting ourselves. We're not telling our brain, no, I'm in work mode right now, I can't think about that. Or like, no, I'm trying to sleep, I can't think about that right now. Or no, I'm trying to be happy and watch a funny video, I can't think about that. I'm pacifying myself. These are very potent lessons for this new moon in a lot of ways. So yeah, those are the top transits. By the way, before we continue on, I wanted to mention that the #1 way to support my work here on YouTube is hitting the like button. And if you made it this far in the video and you're enjoying it and you're not subscribed, what are you doing? You got to hit the subscribe button. But yeah, I also wanted to mention that if you like these types of videos where I give the horoscope reading for the full moon and new moon, I actually have an astrology newsletter where I give you the full outline of these videos, including journal prompts and my tips for this lunation, and they go straight to your inbox. So if that interests you, be sure to sign up in the link in my description. All right, with that said, let's dive into these custom Gemini New Moon journal prompts. If you have your Auraline astrology planner, be sure to flip over to the dedicated New Moon journal prompt area that's within the month of June. And if you don't have that, you don't need it. You can grab a notebook, pen and paper, and I'm gonna go ahead and read off these journal prompts, and you can pause the video to write them out, or you will also find them in the video description. How would you describe the current state of your social life? Reflect on the quality of your social life and, if needed, in what ways you can foster deeper connections. What is your vision for the future in terms of your personal and collective growth? In what ways can your personal growth and the growth of the collective overlap? What subjects or areas of knowledge have you been drawn to learn more about? And finally, moving into this new lunar cycle, do you have any new or existing intentions? All right, y'all, I hope that you enjoyed those writing prompts. I'm gonna go ahead and end it here. If you made it to the end, I'd love if you commented 3 cloud emojis to let me know that you did, to represent all things out of air, you know, our ideas, exchanging these ideas. And just to, you know, say it again, I would love to hear what you want out of an Auraline retreat. What price range works for you? What countries would you like to go to? What time of year is most convenient for you? Because I'm planning it farther out ahead of time to make it most convenient for us all to plan ahead and to go on this amazing trip together. But with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and leave you with my favorite quote. And that is, be gentle with yourself, because life is about the journey, not the destination. All right, see you in the next one.